Hey, hey! Okay, אני מגריל free WebStorm, not WebStorm, free VS Code licenses if you want. You guys each have one, it's right under your seats. Okay, so I'm sorry in advance, I'm going to speak in English because I have a problem with my Ashmonai I hope you don't mind, you all speak English, it's fine. My name is Itamar Kestenbaum, and I'm going to talk today about TC39, which from what I understand about 3 of you have heard of. It's not going to be a technical presentation, meaning I'm not going to live code or anything like that, and it is going to be pretty dense. I'm going to talk about the process of how a JavaScript is born. So bear with me, but I'm going to try and make it exciting for you. So JFK once said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And TC39 and ECMA are about asking what not what JavaScript can do for you, but what you can do for JavaScript. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I'm Itamar Kestenbaum again, and I work at Lemonade. I'm a senior software engineer there. Sometimes I like to contribute to VS Code. I enjoy playing basketball, watching Doctor Who, and of course, I love my family, Alonzi. Also, a week ago we adopted Evie. She passed all of our integration tests, and now she's part of our family, and we're really excited about it. She's named after the Pokemon. So usually we like to talk at this meetup about how to write JavaScript, and that's all fine and nice, but we never usually like to talk about how to make JavaScript. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to go through some active proposals, proposals that are right now in the stages of proposal. We're going to talk about private methods and fields, as well as pipeline operators. And we're going to talk about TC39 itself, what makes up TC39, and what the process is, all the stages. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can get involved in affecting JavaScript and the changes in the standard. There's also going to be Arya Stark and Unicorn in there, so I fit that in there as well. Why should you care, though, about TC39? You write JavaScript every day. You don't necessarily care how it works or why. First of all, when you watch TC39 operate, you can actually learn a ton about the language itself and the underlying technology underneath it and the specifications that go to the browsers that end up implementing what you use every day. You can be the first to learn about new features, which is always very cool and exciting and fun. And it's kind of like meta open source. So you contribute to open source projects all the time probably, and this is like the ima shel open sources. It's really a way for you to contribute not only to the libraries and stuff that you use every day, but to the language itself. So some active proposals. First of all, I'm going to introduce ECMA script, and I'm going to introduce TC39 after I talk about these, so a little bit about the stages. All you have to know is that stage 0 is really a rough draft of the specifications, and stage 4 basically means that it's implemented in a whole bunch of browsers, and you're using it, and your grandmother probably is too. Private fields and methods is the first feature I'm going to talk about, and that's a stage 3 proposal, so it's pretty advanced. Stage 3, private fields and methods mean that a class member can have methods and fields that are only available within that class. So why do we need such a thing, or why didn't it exist beforehand? The reason that we need this is because currently when you declare a class, everything inside of that class that's declared on it, meaning the methods and the fields, all the members, are available from outside the class. Meaning if you have a reference to that class, you can find any field and you can call any method on that. So let's see an example. So here we have a regular class, and you can see we have an ID field on it. And in the constructor, we set the ID to the ID that it's given. And on the bottom, you can see us using that, or somebody who's using our library, or whatever you want, using that. you can see easily that inside of the class you can find this ID, and also outside of the class, if you have a reference to the instance, then you can also console log that out as well. So this actually is a kind of an issue. We've been doing fine with it until now, except that it causes all kinds of issues, like you don't necessarily want people from outside of the code that you wrote to be able to access the methods that you write. Some of them are for internal use only. For example, if you're writing a web component or something like that, and it's supposed to make a call to get information about a user, you don't necessarily want anyone to be able to use that method to call that API call all the time as much as they want. So you can easily abstract that away and hide that by using private fields and methods. And that the specification for private fields and methods looks like this. So all you have to do is put a hash at the beginning of the declaration, the setters, and the getters, and then that makes the field private. So you can see here inside of the declaration of the class, you put hashes, and you can still reference it from within the class on this. However, if you're using it outside of the class, you no longer have access to that. And it doesn't matter if you use brackets. It doesn't matter if you use a hash outside over there. You still won't be able to access it, which I think is pretty neat. So first of all, has anyone used this yet? So a lot of people have voiced concerns over the syntax. Some people said that it's not JavaScripty, whatever that means. Some people said it wasn't JavaScripty, and I understand that, except that things don't look JavaScripty until they're introduced, and then they are JavaScripty. Think about things like arrow functions and stuff like that looked foreign to us, and now we use them every single day. And you have people who suggested using underscore instead of hash to declare methods and things that are private. Does anyone here have any idea why that might not be a good idea? Right, it came from C or C++, but backwards compatibility, that's right. It's not a good idea because underscore and the name of a variable or method or that's already valid JavaScript. So it exists in code everywhere, and even if people use that as a convention, it's still not good because it can break code once that becomes actually private. So somebody actually was a little bit misguided in the TC39 forums and did write that we already have this and the underscore. So the convention can really mislead people into thinking. But also, what's interesting about this is a person who's active in TC39. The regular people like me and you don't have to be Brendan Eich to participate. Everybody is participating in the conversation. It's really cool.
Why not just use private?
Right, so why not just use private? I saw an answer for it, and I don't remember it. But it's definitely in the FAQ. The specification in TC39 has an FAQ, and they do address why not use a private keyword. Add that to instead. So anyway, just like you guys said, it's invalid JavaScript, which actually makes it good, because it means that you're not going to break anything backwards. The next thing we're going to talk about is pipeline operators. This is a really early stage one, and I don't even know if it's going to end up in the specification, but it's really interesting. It makes it so that you won't have to wrap functions and functions and functions and functions, etc., or do some kind of crazy workaround to be able to do multiple transformations on a value. It basically means that you can do infix operator to handle multiple calls on different methods, chaining them together, which is pretty cool. And I already just explained why it's like not so pretty the way we do it right now. These are some workarounds we use right now. So I'm going to use this really simple example, just hello world to hello world with a comma and an exclamation mark, and capitalized. And these are our three methods that we're going to use to achieve that transformation. So I intentionally split it up into three so that you can see the chaining. We have capitalize, which just capitalizes the words. We have comma, which will put a comma instead of the space. And then we have an exclamation, which just adds an exclamation at the end. Pretty straightforward. So these are the workarounds that we had until now. You could assign a new constant for each result of the transformations and then wind up with exclamation at the end, but that's kind of weird and you don't really need those in the middle. Or you can take the value and put it inside of capitalize, and you can wrap capitalize inside of comma, and you can wrap comma inside of exclaim. And that's a lot of wrapping. So in comes pipeline operators. Pipeline operators allow you to just simply put hello world, and then you put that interesting little notation over there, capitalize, comma, exclaim, and then you have your result. It's really simple. It kind of looks like then promise chaining. And I actually remember a few years ago doing having really complicated code, but it was still synchronous. So I would end up having it return a promise just so that I can have it look like this. So I'm really excited, and I hope that this gets passed. But right now it's just stage 1. So other people had some things to say about that. They said it was made JavaScript a little bit less teachable because it's syntactic sugar, so people might not exactly understand how functions work as much. And some people said it looked a little bit homely, which I had to look up, and it turns out that means that it looks just a little bit weird.
Is it inspired by ReasonML by any chance?
It's inspired by a whole bunch of different languages. Julia, Elixir, a whole bunch. Yeah. So, yeah. He asked what it means that it's in stage 1. Stage 1, for right now, we'll say that it just means that it's an early stage. We'll get to exactly what every single stage means in a moment. But first of all, take a step back and let's go over what TC39 is. TC39 is a technical committee of ECMA International. And it standardizes ECMAScript, which is what we know as JavaScript. JavaScript itself is a trademark of Oracle, and I can't use it in this presentation. But what's important to know about this is that TC39 does not concern itself with any biases towards vendors, so it's vendor neutral. It's not biased towards Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, and it's also cross-platform. So it doesn't concern itself with client-side versus server-side, or with what it's going to run on. It's really meant to be all-purpose. I actually found an Urban Dictionary description, so it goes like this. ECMAScript is the best forking scripting language standardized by ECMA International that makes blind Java fanboys cry. ECMAScript is so good I got my kids to try it out. My family has been so happy since we adopted this language. Thank you, ECMA International. So as you can see, it's a really popular language. I also looked at the other technical committees just to make sure I wasn't missing anything good. And it turns out that TC38 is the Environmental Impact of Consumer Electronics Committee. So hippies. And TC45 is in charge of OpenOffice XML formats. So nerds. We're calling people nerds now. This is more our speed. These are our people. So this is a TC39 meeting. And who are these masters of the universe who go and decide basically what we're going to be writing next year? So the members of TC39 are actually companies. Those companies are mostly comprised of large companies like Google, Microsoft, PayPal, and Stripe. These are actual members of ECMA International. Okay, got it. And also Airbnb, Facebook, Netflix, and Salesforce, as well as Mozilla, the Library of Congress, and some smaller companies that want to be involved. The companies themselves send delegates, like these guys, to represent them in making decisions about or voicing concerns about different proposals and deciding what goes into the standard. And every July, the General Assembly of ECMA votes on what ends up being standardized in the standard. So that happens July of every year. Let's talk about the proposal process itself. So we're going to get to the stages now. But first, story time. I was working on a really complicated project that required me to wrap strings in unicorns. And so I wrote this simple function. And to use it, you just do unicornify, and you put Arya Stark in there, and then you have Arya Stark wrapped in unicorns. See, I got there. So turns out I decided to make it available to other people. So I put it on GitHub, and I made it available so that people can use it. I wrote a polyfill for it even, so that I put it on the object prototype as a well-known symbol, symbol unicornify. And now people who include my library can use it everywhere to wrap things in unicorns, which I think is beautiful. And it turns out people liked it. A lot. So I decided to put it towards TC39. This is hypothetical, yes? So these are the stages of TC39 decision-making process. And it's going to go really quickly, but know that things get stuck all the way in the middle for lots of different reasons, and it takes months and even years to get through this process. So 0 through 4, and we'll go through them now, and we'll take our unicorn through that. Stage 0 basically means that a proposal exists. It's planned to be presented at TC39, and that's it. Stage 1 means that you have a champion who took it to TC39, presented the challenge and solution to them, and the use cases and syntax of that proposal. And there also might be polyfills out there already. So Babel might already have included it as a stage 1 polyfill in their library. So now my polyfill is in Babel. The next stage, and I know this is pretty dense, but we'll get there. It's just information, basically, and it's very kind of technical. But formal spec, you have to write it. You write it in your GitHub repository, and it gets introduced to TC39. And at this point, it's expected to be implemented at least in experimental stages. This is what a spec looks like. I'm not going to go through it with you. But just know that it looks alien at first, but if you actually read it, it just looks like a program. Our unicorn's a candidate now. So they approved the spec at ECMA. And any further changes will require the browsers that are implementing the feature, as well as users themselves, to give feedback, and that feedback is taken back and changes the spec. Otherwise, it remains as it is, and this is already very, very advanced. 2 browsers have already implemented this, most likely Firefox Nightly and Canary. It might even have already been included in actual versions of Firefox and Chrome. And if all goes well, our unicorn is now in stage 4, which means we've shipped our unicorn, and and all the tests passed. No changes are expected, and it'll be in the standard in July, which is amazing. Thank you guys for your help. It was hard. It was a long road, but we got through it. Thank you. How can you get involved? You can contribute by going to the actual GitHub organization and putting your 2 cents in on what you think of every spec. It's all public. It's all there. You just need to open an issue and raise concerns, and people do respond all the time. It's really cool. You can go to Twitter. There's even an IRC channel, and you can go to esdiscuss.org as well. People think it's a high castle or something like that is really hard to reach, or maybe decisions are being made in dark rooms, but it's all really right out there. Just people asking themselves what they like to see in the language that they use every single day, and how they feel about others' proposals. Just an example, Benjamin Grumbaum, who's also a member, he's Israeli, a member of the community, and he actually had a real proposal, not a unicorn, go up in front of TC39. It stalled, but it's still pretty cool. It's for escaping special characters in regular expressions. A couple of examples of other suggestions that came from the community, developers like you and me, that I found interesting. Some of them funny, some of them less. This person had an interesting idea in the Decorators proposal, which you'll hear about in a minute, of putting a final decorator to say that a declaration of a field, once it's set, cannot be overridden, which I think is pretty cool. And that's just a person from the community saying, hey, why don't we add this? This seems like a good idea. There's this person who just got stuck at work and decided that because he can't currently use TypeScript with Babel with this specific pipeline proposal the way it's written, we have to immediately move it over to stage 3. Or else he can't finish his project, which I think is less reasonable. You have simple proposals from people on ES Discuss, for example, like math add and math subtract, which are pretty straightforward. And you have proposals that are a little bit more complicated and can take years to get to, like first-class multi-threading support. So making JavaScript multi-threaded, which is quite the undertaking and would take a lot of years if we were to do it, and some people argue that we don't need it. So it really runs the gamut. By the way, you can look on YouTube. There's lots of videos of people from TC39 talking about why, for example, types haven't been introduced at TC39 yet in a serious way, because it's really, really difficult to implement, and they haven't found a solution that works for everybody yet. So yeah. Anyway, I urge you to always think about what JavaScript can do for you, and ask not what JavaScript can do for you, but what you can do for JavaScript. Thank you.